And I really did not understand that you could do that with nothing more than a car battery and some duct tape. It was the Cheetos that made the difference, though, right? I think Ramal was saying that, but I'm not sure.
You guys are wild. You guys are
I don't
wild.
know. It was one of those things.
2 minutes till go time.
So I've got the note sheet set up, Mr. Ben.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramal as our guest. You've got it in connection too, so you can fill in as we go. And
Wait,
I will be flipping it over to you sometime.
don't let them know. Don't let them know.
You're right. I need to keep that. Do a better job of keeping those secrets. All right. Let's see. Interesting stuff today. I think I am kind of excited to get through those tips and pieces and bits and questions for people who are wondering about how that goes. And yes, I'm ready to hit it when you are, sir. Can't wait. Nice. I don't like that.
Doesn't hurt to have some. Doesn't hurt to have some support.
No, I am definitely a fan. There are some McLeans of the Clan McLean here today, so I'm super delighted about that. Makes my day. All right.
All right. Here we go. Doesn't hurt to have some. Doesn't hurt to have some support. No. And of course, this is where we get wild. But like, here we go. As Tito Puente wants to totally overrule my school, welcome everybody. My shirt is appropriate indeed tonight, as I'm joined by both my fellow instructors for office hours tonight. I'm really super glad that you guys are here. So welcome to special guest Ermal. So Prof Ermal and Prof Sean. What up, fellas?
Hey guys, happy to be here.
Hello, everyone.
Woo! Here we go. We're doing it. So week 6 can't really stop us at this point. I feel like this train has gone a running, and I couldn't stop now if I cried. And and maybe you're feeling like that too, because I feel like there's been a lot of stress posting, at least in my networks, and people really feeling their feelings, and I think that's okay. I think also one of the things I want to talk about is when you're in that spot, like how do you keep going? So our sort of topics du jour are really going to be about you guys. That there's only like 3 more weeks left to go in this series. We said that we would do this every week while the ServiceNow fundamentals was free to go. And at some point I was going to switch back to my normal cadence of maybe doing this every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. I feel like I've built some muscles. Maybe you guys have built some muscles. I feel a little stronger. Sean, do you feel stronger?
A little bit.
All right.
Most of my muscles seem like they're like right up in here. They're the ones that make my eyebrows crinkle. But
right? Like some of these muscles I didn't want to build. As we talk about sort of my eyebrow game, I also want to talk about my need for Botox occasional times. Like I think to myself, I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my goodness, those are some like, I feel like sometimes those guys could just lift full on weights. But what I really want to actually talk about instead of all those things is how to keep keeping on. And we have a special guest, Ermal, this week, who has been with us for a little while. And Sean, I know that you guys have been talking. You guys are both kind of doing similar gigs, kind of getting the good word out in each region. And Ermal, like I want you to tell us about yourself and kind of what your gig is and what you're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over, and I'm going to put the back to first principles, how to keep on keeping on, with our special guest, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, for me it was basically I joined ServiceNow about 2.5 years ago. So everything was new at that point. It was overwhelming dealing with a new platform, not knowing about it before, and having to read a lot of material, a lot of topics, a lot of content, and trying to make up something of it, to try and put it all together, try and make sense of it, basically. So it was an overwhelming experience, but at the same time a fun one, because I had this challenge in front of me, where I needed to learn as much as I could about the platform in a short time, basically, and to try and match what I knew about IT, generally speaking, and try and put it in a perspective in the ServiceNow platform. And the whole website and content, the on-demand course, the community, everything that was available made it easier, but you had to organize, to plan accordingly, to try and follow a path. You couldn't just jump into the community and search for something, or maybe just read something in the documentation and make sense of it. Basically, you had to follow a path, a guidance strategy. And Now Learning was exceptional for that. I started with the on-demand courses, and they are built in that way, where you are guided, and always by the end of the topic, by the end of the module, you have that link that sends you to the documentation to learn further about that specific topic that you are actually reading about.
Hey, Ermal, this is one of the things I wanted to ask, because I think we all come from different experiences, right? And for me, it's so long ago, I don't remember those pieces. But there were two things that you talked about in particular that I really want to see if you can shed some light on. You talked about it was overwhelming but fun, and I want to know, what were the things that you did to make it. How did you make the overwhelming fun? And then the other piece that you mentioned was organizing. Like, you talked about the on-demand content and the reading the content from it wasn't the wiki in those days, it would be docs, but still, there are millions of pages in all of them. So what were your tips and tricks for doing that organization? And what are your tips and tricks for making the challenging or overwhelm fun and not, meltdowny?
Making it fun for me was easy, because I was curious. I'm the curious type, so everything that I read, basically, Sean, is something new, and I want to learn more about it. If it's about IT, generally speaking, it's something that I'm curious about. So basically, I want to learn more about it and to know more about it. But some parts, are not so fun, because you come from a certain background. For me personally, it was about 11 years of experience only and exclusively in IT operations, and you were focused in dealing with servers and applications, and stuff that was maybe a certain part of the platform, but obviously there's a lot more to service now. So when you start learning about, for example, let's say ACLs in the ServiceNow fundamentals course, you see them from a different perspective, right? You see them on how to manage the access to the database, to the platform, to the records, instead of managing the access to firewalls. So some things were not so fun, because they were not part of the topics that I had knowledge about. But you try to make them fun simply by trying to connect them somehow to your experience, to what you know, trying to make a sense by trying to use those parts that maybe doesn't do not seem so fun, do not seem so enjoyable. Try to give them to try to make them useful, basically, for what you have experienced in your previous job.
Okay, this is perfect. And this is a great, like, I want to, like, I don't know, crystallize this nugget that I'm getting from you, because I think this is beautiful. You're saying to take the parts that are overwhelming and look for hooks to hook them into either things that you know from your experience, in your case, operations on the IT end of things. But I'm actually working on an article on this that I'm hoping to get out and post it in a couple weeks, just on the idea that mapping. So a lot of times we look at those objectives and we think that we have to meet their objectives, and it's actually the other way around. The objectives that you want to keep, you have to take those objectives and bring them into you to be relevant. So you took things, you said in your case ACLs, which we're going to go to access control, or in the access control list, and you connected to them to something you already had 11 years experience with. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Basically, when I was working with firewalls, you had ACLs with the same concept of giving access or defining certain rules in the firewalls, but eventually they had different. It's not exactly a different purpose, but it's basically a different way of using them, a different strategy of using them. Whereas in the ServiceNow platform, you are using ACLs with the whole different layers of which is the parent table, which is the child table. So it becomes way more complex in that scenario. And to make it easy for me, I would try and create an example that I would relate to. I did this not just for the ACLs, but even, for example, when I wanted to learn about the flow designer and the actions in the flow designer. Basically, I would build something that would be fun, not just related to my experience, but also fun in terms of trying to build it. For example,
Right.
I would build an action that would get a joke from a random from a website that generated random jokes through an API, and you would bring that joke into a Microsoft Teams channel, basically.
That's
So
perfect.
that makes it funnier to build, right? It's
Yep. Well, and that's
That's
funny because as Ben comes back in, this is one of the things when Ben came in and told me that he had done this, I thought it was brilliant. He took context in, and then Ben, you hooked it to something that was everybody can relate to, right? You brought your stuff into your family. You brought the things you were learning into ServiceNow into your kids, right?
absolutely. And so this is one of the things that I kind of wanted to tie this back to, especially as people are feeling like a little bit like it kind of like they're close to the finish line and they're feeling a little bit discouraged. I want to point out, like, Armand, like what you're describing is something that Brené Brown talks about a lot in terms of ground. She calls it grounded confidence. Like you can't have curiosity without interest and the confidence to feel like you could fail, right? Like you have to have both the interest to try, which I think a lot of people do, but then they also have to have the confidence to feel okay failing. And I want to give like a huge shout out to so many people this week who reached out, and I saw some posts and I was like, hey, like I am so happy on the community that everybody was like, look, keep going. It gets better. And also
Yeah.
you can tie some of this stuff back to things that you experience in your life and find ways to gain confidence through well, like if I'm going to quote Brené Brown again, rumbling with some of the content, right? Like actually confronting it, like wrestling with it. You're Kirk and the weird alien guy in the Star Trek, right? And you're like fighting and rolling around on the ground with this content, right? And you can't do that unless you feel confident enough to do so. So like I hear your story and I'm like, wow, you had this confidence, but I think for a lot of people that maybe don't feel as confident in the IT world, are some, can you speak to some of the things that like, now that you've been here a little bit longer, what are some other areas that you might be able to find like ways to apply some of this stuff and be curious about stuff?
Yeah. For anyone that I would say this personally. I think that for anyone that doesn't have that confidence or feels that it's overwhelming or it's difficult or it's impossible, I would say personally, I have learned always by making a mistake and failing. So it's actually the only way to learn, in my opinion, to try and make something mess up and eventually learn from it. So it's normal to have that feeling when everything is new. You have to learn the basics, right? You might be in a stage where you are trying to learn a language, whereas you don't know the alphabet, basically. So it's I know it might seem overwhelming, but I think in that case, what I do is I compartmentalize it. I separate it. I try to isolate a small part and not try and go through the whole content. Not try and learn and become the master of the topic, basically, but just start with the basics, with the terminology. Maybe if immediately you read something and it feels overwhelming because you are reading about terminology that you haven't heard before, the best thing would be to do, in my personal experience, was to go to the docs and to the docs website and just
Mm.
search for that term, right? I need to learn about this terminology because I'm trying to read it, but I don't understand what it is. I have no idea what it's talking about. So before I dive into that topic, I need to read the basics, to read the terminology. So my my strategy for that is to isolate a very small part of the content and just focus on that. Become a beginner and a novice in that try to learn the basics of it, not
So,
become the
so not
master of the
trying,
whole topic.
yeah,
That's
so
great.
not trying to boil the ocean, as we like to sometimes say, right?
That's awesome. You took the words right out of my mouth. I'm so used to that from implementations. We don't want to boil the ocean, but to break those down so that you're fair in terms of overwhelm. I'm throwing these down into the LinkedIn chat, and I'll throw them back into the notes. That whole idea of when failure comes, to change your mindset about it, to break it into as small a window as possible, so that it can then be looked at not like a painful thing, but a learning thing. And then when you see lots of little failures, it's much easier to use them as learning examples than an overwhelming failure that's just one giant one sometimes. And to Ben's point, to look again to that idea of bring those failures into your safe place and experience. So even though we're talking about stuff that's distant, so ServiceNow may not be a platform that you've worked with or areas that you're familiar with, but if you loop those back in to something that you already have experience with, then maybe a failure in that doesn't matter quite as much, or doesn't hurt quite the same way. And Ben's got the link in there for Brene Brown and some of her stuff. I think that's one of the things. I'm always pulling different pieces from Ben, and we'll swap books. But let's be honest, most of the time I'm pulling the books he throws out. And she's on my to read list, but I'm not quite there yet.
Atlas
I
Thunder
love this. So
HBO is pretty sweet. I'm just gonna say, there's a
Jim
whole bit,
Collins.
yeah. But I think the thing that I keep running into again and again, and it doesn't matter if we're talking to somebody who's deeply technical like you are, Amal, or somebody who's like who finds himself feeling like less technical. Ultimately, the thing that you guys all bring to the table is this sort of emotional intelligence and knowing when to reach out to other people or to get encouragement. Like, who are some of the people that really helped you kind of figure out how to continue on this path and who helped you kind of along this journey?
I would say, in that sense, the best scenario that you would have would be someone that is going to support you simply, on the uh, when we talk about the technical aspect, it's not a matter of if I'm learning something technical or not. It's more of a matter of what I'm trying to learn, right? Well, this can be applied in everything in life. Even if I'm trying to do something simple, I need to learn the basics of it before trying to reach that final objective, right? Even if I'm building a car, I need to know about every part, every component of the car before I put it together, right? So it's not a matter of being technical or not. Some I would say references for me have always been usually blogs that or articles or information online that would talk about not just the technical aspect, not just from point A to point C, how to get from one point to the other in technical sense, but also how to good practices on how to learn something, right? How to approach something, and that has been really a big help for me. Usually, I find someone that talks about their experience, how they approached a certain topic, how they learned about a certain topic, and I try to apply the same strategies to learn about myself. So basically, I read everyone that will write generally what they use to learn about a certain topic, right? How they approach a certain topic. My wife has been a big help because I do
Shout
this
out to
study
wives,
buddy.
partners.
I do this study buddy strategy where I try to make her transform certain phrases into questions when I'm learning about a topic. For example, I would just give her the content about an on-demand course that I'm following, right? And she would read a phrase. You don't have to have someone that is technical. You just need someone that can transform a phrase into a question. It's as
Yeah,
simple as that,
Yep.
basically.
I
So
love
she
Yeah.
would ask me, for example, she would read a phrase about the different types of client scripts, and she would ask me, "Hey, what are the different types of client scripts?" They are listed. You have the list of different types of client scripts in the on-demand course, the ServiceNow Fundamentals course. And she would ask me, "Hey, can you tell me the 4 types of client scripts, 5 types? or are there 7 maybe? So she'll try to challenge me that way, to confuse me. This
Oh, I like that.
that's a
Yeah, I don't
strategy
know where
that has been helpful.
I don't know where I would be without my bride. She, from everything from editing to quizzing and questioning, from like my very first Microsoft exam 20 years ago. Um, and I'm fortunate she's very technical as well, and in actually security operations. So when I'm able to do that kind of stuff with her, but the pieces that will help each other on to quiz each other, test each other is huge. So that's awesome. I wanted to ask, actually, either of you, in terms of teaming up and working with teams. Ooh, I like this. This is great. We've got some stuff coming in on the chat as well in terms of ideas. This is great.
I like this huge, like, yeah, trying to celebrate the small wins, like appreciating when you've just mastered something that's completely brand new. I think that's such a huge thing, and like the self-reflection is a big deal. I love that. I love that.
I usually have a 30-minute gaming session, being the fanatic PC gamer, basically to celebrate the small win. I just relax by having a 30-minute
Oh,
gaming session.
okay, yeah. So like little ways to kind of encourage yourself to sort of like a little reward, if you will, right? Like
Yeah.
you stuck out like the workout, the mental workout, and I think that that's a big part of this too, right? It's a mental workout, just like it might be your muscles.
I
So
feel
you're
like I did my part basically, so now I have to reward myself.
right, right. I was going to ask you because you were talking about uh, i- this particular REST API integration, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? That sounds like to me is there was enough of an interest and you kind of wanted to show off a little bit because that's what I like to do too, right? Like there's a little bit of a like I want to try and figure this thing out so that I can then show somebody that I built a thing. That feels really good. Um, so I don't know if that's like if you think maybe some of that was your motivation and you maybe had people that you knew who would be in, like kind of like ooh like he did this thing like I feel like sometimes it's about finding people who will both support you no matter what, but also knowing what other people would be able to help you with and or like just something like a feather in your cap you can find, right? Like some little goal, like little intermediary steps, right?
Yeah, it's also a matter of trying to talk about certain topics. Sometimes when we talk about technical topics, it might feel again overwhelming, because I experience that myself. When I get into a new topic, I have no idea about the basics of it, so it feels overwhelming if you simply try to explain the topic without giving a scenario, without providing a scenario that might be relatable, right? So that's why I use that integration with a REST API integration. Basically, that's why I use the jokes website, because I try to make it fun, to make it
Right.
relatable to anyone, right?
Okay. So to try to make it something that's relatable, something that you would find humorous anyway, right? Like it's just silly, like it's a cool, like little thing. You know, I love that. I love that so much.
That's
So
the
oh, go
way
ahead.
for me to sorry. That's basically the way for me to approach a new topic, to learn it. I need to make it fun for myself, otherwise I'll get bored about it, right? It's a matter of just
Yes.
trying to get to have that relationship with the topic that you are doing, to try and make it interesting to you. That's it.
I like that. Yeah, and it sounds like to me that you hit it from multiple angles in a couple of places, right? Like it's about finding some interest. It was about finding a support network. I also like that you were doing two things like with your support network. One was you and your wife, like you would explain it to her, but then also you would then have her quiz you and you would teach each other. And this is a thing that I found teaching over the years that I didn't realize how much I relied upon as a learner.
Yeah,
Teaching people is so huge. I don't know that I could learn things as fast unless I'm trying to force myself to teach somebody else. Does that make sense?
100%. I've been fortunate enough to always be teaching something for most of my career, but I've found I don't know whether it's a crutch I lean on or what, but it's almost the only way I learn now is to have to explain it to somebody.
Yep.
And then you have to build the mental models and maps that are flexible enough to relate to those other people. And when you do, you find you've kind of connected it into your spider web of network brain. As you start trying to make connections for them, it kind of makes roots and connections in ways that stick better than almost anything else I've done.
I like that, and shout out to all the parents out there like trying to learn more
Mm.
stuff as they continue to age. Because I think about this like it's like a Montessori thing, it's like a Steiner School Waldorf thing. Like it's like all of those frameworks are all about you teach kids, and then you get better as an instructor, and then you teach the kids to teach the other kids, right? And they do this kind of cohort model. And it's interesting to me that especially with things like next gen, that we follow that kind of model. And I think one of the things that we've been trying to encourage with the office hours this summer is people that are coming to the fundamentals course. Look, you're not alone. Like there are a ton of people trying to do this. And that can feel really discouraging if you feel like you're alone, right?
Yep, for sure. Well, and I think this would be the thing that I'd love to do is see, do we have anything else from people who are on now that they want to throw about either tips to prep? And Candace, thank you very much for those. But also questions or challenges you're having with overwhelm. What other pieces are sitting in those? Because that's one of the pieces both Professor Ben and Professor Amal were talking about was just um, the time frame that we've got now and the steps that are involved in what are next, right? We've got finishing the content, and then I believe in finishing the on-demand class, you then request your certificate for test, right?
Yeah, you've got to make sure that you complete all of that content with the capstone and everything to get to the point where you get your like the voucher, and then you can take the exam. I'm not sure if there's like a limited window. I wouldn't wait or sit on it for too long. I'll have to go back and look up some stuff in terms of like the timing and such. But I would imagine that if you finish it this summer, like if you finish it by the end of the month, and I would really try hard to finish it by the end of the month, just to get you like some time to digest it, right? Like, cause it's not just about taking the course content, it's about also finding ways to apply it. So for me, I know that I really needed to really practice some of the content materials to make it stick. And so that's why I implemented ServiceNow at home. I made my kids use it, right? And then I had to teach them how to use it. I made some catalog items so that they were forced to do it. And then what was interesting about that too is that I found ways to, with that, they broke it. like like really easy
So,
early on. Like
bonus, you got to fix it.
right. So I had to figure out how to fix it. And I find that that's a big thing too when you're trying to figure out how to keep on keeping on is this notion of, you know what, we're all going to mess it up. Like the first go around, we are all going to mess it up. And I feel like this was a big deal for me. Finding the safety to fail is so important. So you might even not pass the exam the first time. Like that's
Mhm.
okay. I feel like that is a big muscle like growth moment, right? To even get a chance to get to that point took some guts, right? It took some doing. And I feel like if that happens, don't give up, right? Like there's that kind of, it might take a few times. It
Yeah.
might take a few times.
And exactly as you said, that's absolutely okay. I wrote something and it was super funny because when we had as trainers in the ServiceNow space were growing and more technical things were coming up, I went out and was ramping on event management. And I threw out in the community that, wow,
Mhm.
this was no joke. I failed it 3 times. And people wrote, it was amazing the number of people that wrote went, you did? And I was like, are you kidding me? Of course I did. I did the same thing with Microsoft certifications back in the
Mm.
day. And they just hadn't recognized I don't, people assume, right? You have a lot of background and so therefore, but to be able to go, it's okay to fail, and to be able or willing to share that with other people, it's amazing how much as soon as you do that, everybody else that sees it goes, "Whew, oh my god, thank you, me too,"
Yes.
or I was ready to and I didn't wanna. So getting those pieces out, I'm putting down as tip 5.
Yep. Yeah.
I can
Having,
relate to that, yeah. And in fact, I want to emphasize the fact that sometimes it's even better if you could ask the question before in the community. Basically, I felt myself sometimes that I was alone. I had that feeling, but simply asking in the community while you are preparing for an exam, just going to the community and asking, hey, is anyone else finding troubles with this topic? I'm struggling with this, or how do I prepare about this? Is there any any additional thing that I need to read, right? Things that I might follow up. So just a quick question in the community, even before taking the exam, would be really helpful to try and prepare better for the exam.
Yeah, that's always when I find out when I ask something, because and I still do this. I'll go back through that. I don't want to be the guy who's been here forever and still not know this. But then when I ask, first off, the community I think has evolved in that manner where more and more people they're on that side, and people I think are getting culturally the importance of being able to understand failure and go, no worries, dude, we didn't know that either, or I just found this out 3 weeks ago, or and that was actually something I found that Fred kind of brought up, and I always thought that was fantastic. And Ben, I think you and I talked about this once. He would talk about there are parts to the system that he didn't know, and he would say that he's like, I'm not even sure. Wow, that's cool. But he was always willing to admit that, and I just thought that was so awesome and so inspiring. I think this is a huge thing. So this is great. And I'm trying to get these down in the chat because I'm hoping this session will be one of the ones that people can go back through and review that first 20-minute window and go, here are like written down tips on exactly this stuff. So I think that's fantastic.
There's this quote that I love from Adventure Time from Jake the dog. If you're not familiar with this cartoon, it's fantastic. But there's a quote, and it's the voice actor is it's John. He's the voice of Bender as well. But
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. But this is like sucking at a thing is the first step at getting kind of good at it. And I love that quote for so many reasons, and I kind of want to do like a cross stitch or something and put it on my wall, like so that I can look at it regularly. It's sort of one of those phrases where you realize you are doing yourself a favor by admitting that you don't know what you don't know yet, right? Or you don't know what you right, yeah, so that you know what you don't know at that point, right? And that you're on this journey, but also being able to admit that you do a service to yourself and to other people, right? Like you create this sense of we're all trying to do it. And I think a lot of people feel like just really alone. And so reaching out to other people, sometimes you just need that like little bit of encouragement, and you can be accountable. So it's why I need a gym buddy when I'm regularly trying to make gains from my pains, trying to go from dad bod to god bod. Again, it's going to be a journey. Yeah. So that's like where I'm at with that. So, man, Armand, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So we're going to move on. I think at this point in the show, we're going to talk about It Came from the Parking Lot, which is one of my favorite kind of areas. And this week, let me see if I can find it here. I was like trying to do this at the same time, and I will admit to everybody on the call right now that I did not have my stuff together as I was coming from
Speaking of being willing to admit failure and throw it out there.
As he furiously is like trying to pull up one of the questions from this week. Had a few actually, and I'm teaching CMDB. And might be an interesting one. In fact, let me get my banner switched over here if I'm on the.
So, and while you're doing that, I want to back up for people who are still wrapping their heads around this idea of CMDB, or a configuration management database, right? We always remember that this is the things that people do stuff to. This is the core aspect of when you think about anything we do today is ultimately backed by some kind of information technology, right? And that information technology means somewhere behind it, anything we do today has everything from hardware, which is Ramal's world, right? Servers and routers and racks and all that stuff, and applications or software that it sits on. And those are the things that make up the CMDB, or configuration management database, with the configuration items. So keeping that list of those things that we do stuff to, huge, because if you have stuff that doesn't exist or things that don't exist anymore, people are trying to do stuff where there isn't anything to work on. If you have other pieces that are falsely reported, then you have things busy breaking into the infrastructure that you don't know about. So aligning that stuff is huge. And then Ben brings up this idea of a CSDM, or common service data model. So let me throw that in the notes.
Yep. So this is where we're going to go into a little bit of this, because honestly, this This concept has been one that's been floating around the community for a long time. Big shout out to Scott Lem and folks who have been regularly kind of pushing this forward. And we reference it all the time. And yet we also, at the same time, go, you know what? It's out of scope to talk about because it's too big. Because we don't have like a lot of prescriptive stuff. So the question I got, and then I regularly get, and I got it this week as well as I'm teaching configuration management database fundamentals, which is anything but. It is sort of a 3-day soup to nuts. Like I'm gonna learn what this thing is, and then I will learn how to take care of it. Right. So if you thought about this notion as a thing that you could do, and not just a thing that you could do, but like a pet that you could own, a thing that you could have, because it is a living, breathing thing. People look at this diagram and then they look at the solution brief and they go, wait, what? They look at this thing and it's like the very first time they read it, no offense, like we look at it and it's very specific and it immediately says that this is like not prescriptive. It's very descriptive. And that is a sign to me immediately that we are in a space where everything is consultancy and it depends. And it means that like there are a bunch of things that you have to kind of feel your way around, right? So if I were to read this, it sounds a little bit like reading the shipping news and or like the GDPR directive, right? So if I were to look at something, like I'm just going to pick a random page and we're going to go, right? You ready? What is the value of foundation? As seen in Figure 9, the foundation stage focuses on 9 out-of-the-box referential tables. Company, business unit, department, location, groups, users, CMDB group product models, and contracts. Starting with these objects, provide the following value. And you're like, wait, what? What is going on? And so here's where we're going to dig in a little bit and talk about, if we're going to break this down, here's where we start. And again, sort of like we did last week, a lot of this comes down to it depends, which honestly feels a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. And I'm going to ask Ramal, do you have kids or a family or a house or a car? Or do you live in a place and have a job? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Of course you do, right? We all do. So then, what services do you provide? Right? Like what,
Yeah.
like if somebody were to ask you, what services do you provide? You have
Auto
a
purchase, basically.
right? Like
Yeah.
there's lots of services that we provide. And so this is one of those areas, if we're going to talk about doing a deep dive, where do we start with this stuff? And there are some great videos on YouTube from many of our practitioners, but I think they immediately fall into you already understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So what I want to do in this segment real quick is have you and I kind of discuss, if we were to sit down and try to figure out, and let me go to my all here. If we went to CSDM, right, this common services, how would we explain it? Like, how would you explain this to your kids, right? How would you explain this to somebody that you run into at the grocery store? Like, how would you explain this to a bunch of people? And I think what we can do, and this is one of those things we've done videos on a couple times, Sean and I have internally, but let me ask you, what's the most requested service at your house? If you had to think about this, right? I can tell you what mine is.
That's a great question. I haven't thought about it.
Do you provide, I was actually, hold on. I was just like, I need to pull this one off to the other screen here. I was going to type in the comment, video game time. Yeah, I was actually going to say, so the most commonly requested thing at my house is food. I'm
Yeah.
hungry. Right? Like, I'm hungry, my kids are hungry, somebody else is hungry, somebody in my house is going to eat. That's a service, right? Like if you were solving this problem, you are oftentimes providing a service to other people. So you can even break this down into smaller pieces. When we think about CSDM, one of the things that I like to kind of tell people is that you can think about, it doesn't have to be a service that makes money. It just has to be a thing that you do, right? It is a thing that we do, and we need to be able to measure it. And so here's like, let's break it down into its constituent pieces. So like if your kids are hungry or if you're providing meals, you've got, well, like you could just think of it at the top line, and you can break it into offerings. You could say, here's
Yeah.
breakfast offering, lunch offering, dinner offering, and snacking. Right? And what do they take advantage of? Now, what's cool about this is when you start to break it down like this, you know that sometimes the kids will eat the thing that you make them, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you make it. Sometimes you order it. Sometimes you pick it up on the way to school. Same thing with some of these other items, right? And when you
Yeah.
start thinking about this, what are all the dependencies here? Like, this is where the CSDM stuff gets really interesting because in order to provide food at your household, there are supporting capabilities and supporting processes. You have to go to the grocery store, you have to make a budget, you have to source food, and then sometimes you don't feel like offering to make breakfast anymore that morning because you're tired and you don't want to, you don't have time, so you outsource it, right? So then you pull the trigger on DoorDash or Uber Eats or any of these other things, right? Those are all other supporting services. And so just identifying all the pieces, just like laying all the puzzle pieces out on the table is one big part of where do you start. The only way to start is to identify what all the pieces are. You can't organize the stuff. You can't organize the Legos until you dump out the box. Like it's impossible to sort all the Legos in a box. You have to put them on a table, right? You have to spread them out. So that's one way to do it, right? And a lot of times I'll start like with a service. So one of the things that I like to do is have people model a service. And I don't know if you've done this exercise or not with other folks. I made my kids sit and think about it, right? And it was really interesting when my son was like, "Wait a minute. You have to do all of that." It was sort of an aha moment. He knew that I had to do all that stuff to provide dinner. When you break it out and you think about all the pieces and all the places it could go wrong, right? And the cost associated with each of the different choices. That kind of blew his mind. The other place I like to have people start or think about, and I don't know if you've also done this, and again, for those of you guys who have no idea what I'm talking about, you at least have the ability to kind of think about what are you doing in your household and what are your kids consuming, right? So the other alternative, so this is if you were going to come at it from a service offering perspective, which some people want to be able to do. The other way that I like to think about this is to not even think about this at all, right? Let's not think about the services yet. You just go and you get an inventory. You ask yourself, because then this is actually pretty interesting too. What apps are my kids using? Or it just doesn't have to be kids. It could be our people, including yourself. And we'll say organization, aka my house, using, right? This is a crazy idea, right? And which of these things did you build? Maybe you didn't build any of them, right? But you're going to put down all the apps and then where do they fit in? Why are they using Pokemon Go? Why are they using email? Why are they using text? Why are they using TikTok? Just like list all of them and just get an inventory and you throw them into this table, my friends. This is a rad table and you can use the APM module to do this, but also the other place you can do this since we're doing the deeper dive stuff, you can go into here. Oh, wrong place, wrong window. Yikes. This happens sometimes too. I get the wrong window up. Not that one.
Yeah, it's basically the whole concept is as simple as trying to understand not just what apps are being used, right? But it's also how they relate with each other. Maybe if
Right?
I'm getting Spotify, do I need to get it for the whole family? Right?
Right?
That's
I love
as
that.
easy as, right? Yeah.
I love that. Do I need to order Spotify for everyone or just me? Do I need to get Apple Music for everybody or just me? Do I
How do I
need
keep my house running, basically, and not just the food, but everything that you do, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that. I love that. That is like such a great thing because in the one example in this case would be, oh man, I'm just going to inventory. I've got Spotify, I've got
yeah,
Pandora, I've got Apple Music, right? And you might think to yourself like, well, I need all three, clearly, right? Like which streaming services are you using, right? And if you think about this, these tie back to something. They actually perform a function in your household. Y'all in the chat, I know you guys know I would be murdered alive if we didn't have entertainment in the form of music. And sometimes it's just like specific kinds of music. So like, oh, do I need Spotify, Pandora, and Apple Music? Oh, and I also we have to do SoundCloud in my house.
YouTube Music, basically. So you end
Yeah.
up,
Yeah, you end up with all of them and you're like, why do I
yeah,
need all of them? And you go back and you were like, okay, I need them for this reason. But you know what? Every business does this too. You have to be able to tie them back to a business, like a use case. And in this case, we go, okay, well, it ties into entertainment in the form of music. People are listening to stuff. And some of those things that we think about, some of them are like specifically, I do it for podcasts a lot, but also music. And we do the same thing for like, video streaming. And once you start kind of putting all those things out on the table, you can kind of do your full inventory and you're like, oh, I've got this and this and this and this. So they are supporting my ability to make sure my kids don't tear the house down. They don't burn up like the house, right? Or they don't murder me alive in the car or whatever. Cause I don't know about you, but I would have died if I couldn't get the wiggles when my kids were little. Like I just wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for fruit salad. Yummy, yummy. Like that's just how we roll. Um, my kids will object to that if they hear this later. I'm just going to tell you both of that. We would sing that even when they were teens sometimes. Like we would just joke about it and we could still sing it. Um, but yeah, like being able to do this and think about it from this perspective is super helpful. It doesn't necessarily have to be
yeah,
this is an official business service, right? Because you as parents or you as somebody that lives or exists in the world, you provide services to other people in exchange sometimes for other services. I like to think that my kids also are learning how to provide services back to the household. Sometimes they mess up their SLA. That part sucks. But yeah, I think that this is where we're going with this. I think in terms of where do you start with CSDM? Yes, it's helpful to read the white paper. Yes, it's helpful to look at the diagram. Yes, it's helpful to look
yeah,
at the cheat sheet. I think you have to tie it back to something that we understand. And sometimes my biggest beef with this stuff is, and maybe you agree with this or maybe you disagree, most of us don't have the full picture in an enterprise,
exactly.
right? But we have the
And
full
you are the person responsible for it, right? So being the person
right.
responsible, you have to have the full picture. Otherwise, you can't just simply keep buying services just because they need to listen to one song, right? So maybe some services are overlapping. You don't need all of them. So being the person responsible about those services, you have to think about, hey, do I need all of these services? Maybe I need to have a clear idea about what's happening, so to make a better decision, right? That's
Yep.
the whole point.
Yeah, and that's the big part, right? You have to have the full picture. And if you're not the person responsible, accountable, like maybe your stakeholders are consulted, sometimes they're just informed. If you don't have all like if you can't say that can wear all four of those hats, it's really hard to understand the bigger picture. And one of the reasons I love being able to bring this back into a place where we can just start talking about stuff that we understand is because we can wear all the hats. right? An enterprise is just like a very big scaled household, right? In a lot of ways, a lot of respects. Sure, there's plenty of, don't at me, fellas and ladies. Like I get it, right? Like there are differences, but this is where we start the understanding. So sometimes we get wrapped up in this, right? We get wrapped around the axle.
Yeah, because it's a matter of trying. As I was saying before, you when you try to approach it, as you said, Ben, basically, as you also said right now, when you try to approach it from that white paper there, from just a documented PDF or maybe a video on YouTube that is going to be very technical and very specific to CSDM, they start with assuming that you know about the basics, you know about the terminology, and you struggle into absorbing all that information because
Right.
you have no idea about basics.
And you
When you
can't test drive it either if you're in that situation, right? Like you don't have all the information to test drive it. You can test drive it and break it at home, right? You can break it at home. I know exactly what'll happen if I take the wiggles away, right?
Well, so, and Ben, I just want to kind of make sure when you talk the CSDM, you're talking about a framework that's documented, and that's the piece where that white paper came out.
Mhm.
But we're on the fourth or fifth iteration
Because we keep
of that.
getting better at the understanding,
Yeah.
partly because we keep doing this.
Yeah, and it sounds funny, but it's also very cool to get for people who are on one hand looking at all the technical nuances of ServiceNow and going, I have to practice simulators and I have to know which button to click or where to go. There is also an aspect that is kind of more conceptual, and this idea of a common service data model is really the framework around which we think about how to track whether that service is something, as you said, like which streaming services to use or which games your families use or which way the food gets served. It's still just a common reference point. And so that document's more a how do we, I had it in my notes and I wanted to check before I hit go on it. It's really a guidance and framework for talking about the stuff before you get your fingers on the keys and start tapping.
Yeah, exactly. And it's evolved and it continues to
Mm-hmm.
evolve. And I think one of the things that makes it really salient right now is that as we start to divvy up and divide and serviceify, I guess if that's a word, right? Like everything as a service, both in ServiceNow and in the larger context of the world,
Yep.
um, our understanding in the last 5 years of how this stuff works is improved only because so many people have gone through and really monetized microservices, right? Like, and made them available to households, right? So households
Yeah.
suddenly have the ability to get this slice of being able to outsource a component of a thing that they wouldn't have been able to either understand or afford previously, right?
Well, and I think that's kind of it's cool, but it's also funny in that in the content we deliver, and I think even sometimes the content that people use, we need to realize that it's really coming to everybody's doorstep now. A lot
Mhm.
of those pieces, ideas like a catalog, or even ideas like an IT support and service, were things that a small percentage of people knew who were in the using technologies. But now technologies are so ubiquitous, they're everywhere, and really anyone in a household knows where to go for support, and they, even though they don't maybe call it the incident problem change and configuration
Right.
management database, they're still using it. So it's actually more common than you know. And back with our first principles, to take these deeper concepts and go, oh, I do this all the time, then it's not as
Right.
intimidating and it's not as overwhelming.
Right. Right.
Exactly,
Yes.
and the part that it evolves is basically the same as if we take again the analogy of the house, the example of a house, you can think of a water leak that is going to bring a power outage. The power outage is going to break your alarm, and then what do you do when the alarm doesn't work? You haven't had this problem before, but now you just found out you have this issue basically, and what you do is to try and simply understand what you should do in case your alarm is not working, and from this moment on you know what you should do when the alarm is not working. So what you do next is you write it down and you know what to do for the next time when it happens, right? That's how the CSDM is also evolving. We learn something new, it evolves, it shapes into what are the next steps.
I would totally 100% agree on that one, because it's all about the evolution, right? It's all about the journey, and I think it's all about us trying to figure out little steps, right? And we're all getting better. And I think it's a nice tie back to, honestly, just admitting that we don't always have all of the solutions or all of the information. Um, I mean, we get better when y'all ask us questions. And so, speaking of which, we're gonna transition into, that felt good. Um, yeah, into Ask Us Anything. So, like, this is one of those things where, oh, radio's professional. We're getting there. You guys, ask us anything in terms of whether it be CSDM, it could be around the ServiceNow fundamentals, it could be around our main topic, which I think we're trying to keep in the same vent. Um, how do we keep going? How do we keep encouraging ourselves to learn and grow when we just got nothing left? Because I had nothing left today, but you know what? I was accountable to you guys out there in the chat and on LinkedIn and on YouTube, and to my two fellow profs here. So, like, you guys are my accountability engine. You've been keeping me going today. So I'm gonna refresh here and see if we get any more stuff in the chat. Hopefully, we get some other cool and interesting questions. We tend to get some interesting ones. I had a lot of stuff for the parking lot, but I didn't want to do any more crazy deep dives if I can avoid it, because I feel like I shouldn't bore our audience too much.
I personally love questions because that's how I also learn new things. Basically, sometimes you don't think about the most basic questions. You try maybe I try to overthink about something. I try to go into a very technical aspect. I don't think about basics, and you get asked sometimes those easy questions or simple questions that you haven't thought about before, and immediately you start trying to find out. You start searching and trying to find out how to doing research and trying to find out how to answer that question, basically. So it's a great way to learn new things, to try and ask questions that and share basically what your thoughts are on a certain topic.
I like that a lot. I like that from a couple of angles too. And if we're vamping for a minute to see if we get some questions, Amal, you mentioned something about like best practices, good practices, when people want to say like, oh, for folks that are maybe you finish up and you get your CSA right certificate and you're ready to go and you're going to start interviewing, right? When people come at you with the, hey, what's the best practice for, or what have you, like, I feel like that's a really interesting kind of topic here. And I think for us who we're being willing to be vulnerable right now, I know how I want to respond to when somebody says like, what's the best practice for this thing? Right. And I want to, like, cause we get that question in the classroom all the time, right? Like, just tell me what to do. Right. And when people are interviewing for jobs, I know that their managers just want the solution and they're hoping that somebody that they interview, or maybe that they're going to get the job, right, that they have the solution too. How do you respond to that when somebody asks you about a best practice?
That actually gets asked quite a lot, and frankly, I wouldn't like to simply put everything under best practice. I
Yeah, best practice
don't
gets
really want to include, yeah, right. Not all, it doesn't fall. It doesn't fall under that definition every time. But yeah, what I've noticed, and this is, for example, something, Ben, that has been asked also in relation to the exam. For example, someone might ask, hey, what resources do I use to prepare for the exam, right? Is it just Now Learning, or do I use Quizlet, or do I use Udemy, or do I use other content? And basically, every time that you try to say that, hey, look, the best resource is Now Learning, and documentation, the official resources and content from ServiceNow, you might get that feeling of, I'm trying to point you to a certain direction, but eventually I'm trying to point you to the right direction, because I've tried it myself. It's not, I'm not saying that just to say it, right? I've done the same thing. I checked those websites, and whenever they were provided to me, I went and checked some flashcards on Quizlet, and basically they were irrelevant. Why were they irrelevant? Not because someone told me, but because I attended the exam myself, and
Right.
I know that those were not questions that were part of the exam, right? And now I'm getting a lot of other feedback from people that tried the exam, failed because they tried to follow resources in Udemy or Quizlet, right, that were not relevant to the exam at all. So
Yeah.
it's not a matter of this is the best practice to follow. It's a matter of try and listen to others that have gone through that path. Right? Who has gone through that path might advise you because they have experienced that same path. And usually nowadays you find a lot of these types of questions. Even during the class, you might find out you might have questions on okay, but what are the next steps? Let's say that I completed the ServiceNow fundamentals course, right? I went through the CSA exam. I passed the exam. Just became a certified system administrator. What do I do next? What are the next steps? This is a very generic question. What do you do next depends on who you are, depends on what you
Right.
like, right? I can tell you, hey, go towards my IT operations path. Maybe you don't enjoy that at all, right? You
Right.
might be more prone to scripting. So it's a very broad and open question.
Ooh, all right. We got some takers in the chat on that.
I like that. That's awesome.
All right. So we could do, I feel like, hold on. While we're considering this, I have to do a thing, and I feel like, all right, we're going to do this real quick. We're going to see if it works. While we're kind of considering on the topic, what are your elevator pitches for ServiceNow? I feel like in the chat, guys and ladies and folks, and or as my friends Betsy and Sarah would say, they bees and gentle dems. What are some of the weirdest questions you've tried to answer around ServiceNow, right? Like when people like related in terms of like interview questions, that might be fun too. If you got those in the chat, I'm going to go and do a thing real quick in the background. But if anybody wants to start with on the topic of interviews, what is ServiceNow? What's your elevator pitch?
I will grab this. Well, and I want to do two things. On the best practice concept, I just want to say I tend to lean people, particularly because many of the people in this audience may be implementing or looking to implement on behalf of customers. And as Ben said, the idea of best practice is kind of prescriptive. So I tend to switch it to good practice. And then the other piece to think about is that the art of that, which is what Ermal was talking about, is that if it were I could nail it down to one thing, we would nail it down to one thing and people would use the spreadsheet and then there'd be no reason for us to be doing anything. So the art of good practice is recognizing the art part and figuring out which practice of those good practices work for you. In terms of the elevator pitch, I will throw this straight out too. I could say the ServiceNow is a platform which facilitates people doing stuff to things and then hope that they'll ask me more questions. But what I think I would say as an elevator pitch for what ServiceNow is probably that ServiceNow is an enterprise-wide platform for automating, speeding, and managing work. Whatever work in whatever department in whatever thing in any organization that you're doing work with, ServiceNow is a cloud-based platform in which people can automate and do their work more efficiently. How'd I do? Was that under 45? Was that first floor to sixth floor or first floor to 12th floor?
I don't know. I'm like, and the survey says, I think that was probably okay. Like, I feel like that was probably, yeah, I feel like you did pretty good there. I'm hoping that we get some other good questions in the chat too about like things that you are worried that somebody might ask you about post CSA. Like how do you explain this? I love this.
Yeah, this is a great question, Alyssa. I love that.
And I definitely want to be like, all right, let's play a game. Like we'll do a little bit of a, we'll do a little thing here. We'll do the board.
Do you have an elevator? You just need an elevator bing and then an elevator bong, and then you can start and like Ermal can go, hey, we're in the elevator, close, floor 1. Ermal, what is ServiceNow?
What is ServiceNow, Ermal?
a shortcut to getting rid of those repetitive automated tasks that you do every day.
Man, that was like first floor before you hit the second floor. That was
I
awesome.
like it. I like it. And I feel like the survey says, yes, I feel like we did it. We definitely got there. So, depends on the audience, right? So I'm going to do the, I'm going to qualify the audience, right? So, oh, I did the thing. I'm so sorry. It depends on who's asking me, right? If I am talking to somebody who is at a strategic level and making like higher level business decisions, like, right, like I've gotten in and we're going to be doing like the thing, like we were talking about, like how to make, we're going to talk efficiencies in the like effectorator in the, right, like, and we're talking about bottom line, all of the synergistic buzzword, like rubber hitting the road sort of metaphors and buzzwords. We can toss all that out. All right. If I'm talking to that audience, oftentimes I talk about ServiceNow just being the ServiceNow is just like the place where everybody engages. It's the enterprise. It is both the enterprise service bus where we operate everything. It is also the source of truth and engagement for like all of our tasks. Like that's it. Like that's kind of like my quick. And if people are interested, then I try to go deeper. Right? Tell me more about that. Right? When you say, what does the enterprise service bus mean? Right? That's if I'm talking to that audience, right? If I'm talking to a specific group and they want to know if you've got admin chops, I think Sean's got it. And Armal, you've also got it. Like it's the same idea. Like this is just where everybody gets the work done.
Yeah.
Right? That's what Fred Luddy would always say. Like this is where the work gets done. Like ServiceNow is where the work gets done. We take all the stuff out of email. We take all the stuff out of Jira. We take all the stuff out of all these other systems. Right? And that's where we go. So that's what I would say. So I don't know how you guys feel about that. Like if we did we do it? Did I get the ding or did I get the I guess we'll have to vote. You guys can hit me up in the comments. Did Ben who won the game, right? Like who won the game on this one a little bit later. But I'm also interested, like I almost want to do a thing here, and I'm just going to share as we kind of like wrap this in here and I'll be real honest, chat. I got to let you know, you guys are watching this after the fact, listening to this after the fact.
Ben, are you going to lean in and give him the eyebrow?
I would like to answer that question with another question. Basically, what is actually ServiceNow to you, to everyone that is hearing us?
Alyssa gave us the ding. That's
Ding!
good. Points.
We did it. We did it. We did it. We did it. I like it. All right. But yeah, like I guess we could do that in the comments. What is it in the chat? Because you know what? Everybody, we're doing this together. This is a community effort. Like if we're sharing the ways that in which we can talk about this, actually, this is really like now I'm like, oh, this is good. There is a TED Talk about introductions. We all do it wrong.
Yeah.
We all do it wrong. We all do it wrong. Do you guys know how I introduce myself to people these days? I have my son to thank for it. It used to be like, it was really easy before. I'd be like at parties, somebody would be like, oh, what do you do for a living? I work in video games. And then I would just get to drop the mic.
Walk away.
It would just be like, and we're done. And we're done. But now, like, when I worked at ServiceNow, like when I started at ServiceNow, I was like, oh man, I need to rethink the whole thing, right? How do I explain to people what I do? I'm curious what you guys say about this. I'll tell you what my son tells everybody I do. And that was actually really helpful.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad is like some sort of online Twitch streamer for some software company. Which
amplifies it.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like
I'll
that.
take that.
Yeah, I'll take it. but actually, here's how I explain it. Um, when people ask me what to do, I get online or I go to somebody's place and I tell them how to automate all the things.
Nice.
Yeah, that's how I just be bing bang boom done. And if I had cards, I would totally, and Carol, if you're listening, my manager, um, I would love to change my title to dilettante. I think that would be great. I would just like Benjamin Forrest dilettante, because I feel like I get to dabble in all this stuff, right? I just talk to people. That's my whole, like, that is my title. I talk to people. That's how I
I
explain
like
my
it.
gig. So how do you guys explain yourself at a party? What do you do?
Ramal, how about you? Yeah.
Yeah, I usually go with the simplest way possible. I try to teach others about a platform that makes their everyday life easier, basically their jobs
All
easier.
right.
So that's a very generic level.
No, I think that's great though. Like it leaves enough. I'm always worried in my head when people ask me what I do. This is what I hear.
Right.
Oh, I gotta make it make sense. I gotta like hold on. I uh right. So if I can't explain what I'm doing in that amount of time, I feel like I've just totally failed.
All right, so let me ask both of you, gentlemen, do you run into that issue where, and this actually I think is a good point onto Alyssa's question too. So we all know the elevator pitch, but do the two of you run into you only have two pitches? One is the elevator pitch, and the other is the other one. Like, what do you
Mm.
do? I teach technology to people. I don't understand. Well, because I run into that sometimes. I would probably use I've jokingly, it's very funny because both my bride and I talk about, we're both in technology, and many of the people in our family have no idea what we do. So much so that, like, in family newsletters that comes out, well, Casey and Sean doing whatever it is, that techie stuff. So I have alternately used, I am the nerd whisperer, or I teach
I like
folks who are in technology. Um, but then very quickly, when people do well, tell me more, I go from the too little depth to way too much, and I have to watch because I see their eyes glaze over, and I'm like, oops, I went too far. So
and the truth is out there. Like you just start talking, and suddenly you're Fox Mulder, and like shaking in a corner, right?
right.
Like no, I get you.
Yeah, that happens. That happens. It's a common occurrence. It will always happen. Basically, when you start talking about it, you go way over the technical side.
Yeah, I feel like there should be I almost feel like that could be another practice. People practice in sales, and it has distributed from sales to everywhere else, the elevator pitch. But I think there is the danger of, we almost need to start talking about or practicing a medium pitch. Like not an elevator, but a down the hall, because
Oh,
we
right, because you got to
we
get
all
into
rapidly go right from the elevator to the 26-mile marathon pit, and that's not. And I'm hugely guilty of that one. So.
All right, all right. Um, Inc. did a thing on this. HBR did a thing on this a few years ago. Like the biggest mistakes you'll make when introducing yourself, and this is relevant for those of you guys who are going to get through your CSA and then try to introduce yourself after the fact. I'll put this one in the chat too. There's a few of these, and they usually go down in those same kind of ways, right? Like this gets back into hook and loop, which I know we've talked about on the catalytic hour.
Mhm.
This is a thing we use in classes all the time. We do the icebreaker, and then we do a thing like where we introduce a topic and we go, all right, here's the hook and here's the open. We call it the open loop, right? I'm going to tell you how to do this thing. Hang with me for a minute, right? And we got to get there, right? Like you kind of do the cliffhanger. This is why, like, Dickens would always end every serialized short story on a cliffhanger, because they knew, right, that it was going to get to the next part. So if you're trying to get to that medium place, I feel like if you get the elevator pitch, the thing that like Sean, you're talking about is that people don't talk about the it's not just the medium pitch because man, now I feel like I'm going to talk about Magic the Gathering, and that's a bad thing for this audience. But this is specifically like once the opening gambit is done, not only do you have to memorize like the opening gambit, like that you want to make, right? Your preferred gambit in chess, if we're going to go there. When we're talking about strategy, it's like all of the potential places because you can't just say like there's always a second perfect medium pitch because you have to reply to
Yeah.
what the person asked and how they responded. So when you're interviewing and you're like, you get the, like, what do you do? And can you tell me about ServiceNow? And you have the pithy, like, I just automate all the things. Right. Like, and you've got like the perfect, like very kind of smoky, sexy, like Victor Mature, like, I think I'm going to be doing this thing and I've done this before. I do one job and I do it really well. And here's my pitch. Right. And then they're like, I'm in. Like, tell me more. And then you're like, hold on, wait a second. I've got to Google something. So it's not just tips for overwhelm. This is actually like a good,
Yeah.
like we got asked a couple of AMAs about, so one, what was your like 30-second pitch for what is ServiceNow if you're trying to explain it? Because I think a lot of people that are taking their CSAs right now are probably going to be doing gigs like where they are interviewing for admin positions or like potentially like support in those functions and those roles. And they need to be able to explain, can you prove to me that you understand what this platform is? I feel
Yeah.
like a couple of good solid opening lines with that. And then somehow we ended up in the things that we all do to poorly explain what we do for a living. And so in the chat, if you're just getting here, and honestly, like if you're listening to this recording after, please, I hope you tell me how you introduce yourself because that would be super awesome if we just did a quick take. I will do a super cut if you want to send us a voicemail or a voice memo and send it either record it and send it to myself or Sean, ben.forrest at ServiceNow or Sean.mclean at ServiceNow. Record yourself. Like I would love that. I would love to do just like a super
Well,
cut of all of us doing this.
and not to mention, it's funny because and Jace, in terms of tips for overwhelm, that was the beginning of the whole session because we were talking about finishing the self-paced sessions with the Now Learning and the self-paced certification piece. So that's where we got the tips for overwhelm. We got into this elevator pitch for ServiceNow or elevator pitch for yourself or short pitches. But to Ben's idea, one of the things that actually ties into that first section was just the idea that you learn things when you teach them. So if you were to give us your recording of your short take on ServiceNow, or you would practice it and get that much better at it. Because giving it to someone else or practicing it for presentation is one of the best tips I can think of to improve or get better at those pieces.
Okay. I like that. I like that, Jace. Like
Jace threw his down. That's perfect.
Yep. I make it work better.
Yeah.
I think that's like so it's like when you call this person, I make it work better. I like that. Like I kind of just like being able to be like, bam, cool. Tell me more about that. And that's where we were actually getting into. So we're kind of talking about opening gambits when it comes to both not just introducing yourself at a party, but also in an interview. Tell me about your previous gig, right? Like tell me what you did before, right? I think that's an important skill to be able to kind of both introduce yourself to others and to potential employers and be able to kind of position yourself in a way that isn't false, but also does you credit and then gives you an opportunity to engage in further conversation to kind of keep that thing going, right? Because you don't want it to be an interrogation, but at the same time, you also want to be able to be like, this is like a speed dating thing, right? When you're interviewing, you are, for better or worse, like when you're interviewing, it is a relationship. You have a relationship with this other entity and you have to figure
Yeah.
out whether or not you feel like dating them. It's
Well,
the
and
same kind of thing.
Well, and I feel like, and this is one of those things that if I've got this right, Jace does a podcast as well on exactly that focus, which I think is a great area with interviewing and components about that. True. So I think it would be awesome to see, Jace is a great take on this, and I think there are some other great pieces to look at out there and great resources doing exactly that. It's really neat to me right now on LinkedIn, and I just posted another one on LinkedIn from Will Giamono, who was talking about more building into the working community from Women at Work, I think was the name of the group of the organization. And then a week ago, we had the lady coding happy hour, which was awesome. It was on YouTube, some fantastic stuff. But the point is, not just this resource, there are some fantastic resources out there for exactly this area. Getting started from everything on the career path to the continuing the career path to the interview piece. I'm going to try to look those couple links up.
All right.
And Jace, yours as well, because
I like it. Yeah. Man, Jace, you're getting here. And I was like, I wanted to be able to give you a shout out earlier. We were talking to Ermal about some of the, like, when you started like trying to figure stuff out. What did you build? How did you go about it? I know that you built like the cool news aggregator. And I feel like one of the things that gets people going when they're trying to get started is just trying to find like hooks or interest, or like, I want to solve a problem, or I need to figure out how to make this relevant to me. And some people don't have, not everybody has the kind of, we're just trying to figure out how to make it relevant, which I love that. So no, I'm glad you're here in it all. So we were just like celebrating chat for a minute, and we were having a good time doing opening lines and asking all kinds of questions. So I love it. I love it. So Ermal, continuing on this question. So let's say that you get your elevator pitch, to Sean's point, and you have a solid opening line, right? I do my thing, and I sound so cool doing it. I've done the thing. And then they ask you, wait, what now? Right? Like, what's the medium? Like, how do you determine how to go right? Like, I think that there's a skill to this specifically that I don't know if everybody picks up on, because I think we all focus on the elevator pitch where, like, I do the cool thing. I've got one skill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do it very well. And you don't want to see me. You don't want to be on the other side of it, right?
I'm
There's
back,
like that part.
basically.
Yeah. Right. And they're like, but wait, so tell me about like the other things you do, right? Like, I feel like there's a specific thing that I look for ahead of the interview that I think, and I'm not trying to lead you anywhere, but I'm curious if you do, like, if you react in the moment. So you make your opening gambit. They're like, oh, cool, Armel, I'm really in. Tell me more about yourself. Right. And you're like, okay, how do I go here? Right.
I have always a fail safe in that scenario. I try to use analogies to try and
Okay.
explain it in a simple way. That's I fall back to that always. So I would generally build up a simple analogy, like the example that we did that you did earlier for CSDM with the house, right, and the different services.
Mhm.
I try to use that same approach to try simplify it, just so they can relate to that role. The other person, the audience, can relate to that role, basically to what I'm doing. Once they can somehow relate to it, then you can start making it slightly more technical and going further into it, right? Exploring it more.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. I like that. And Jace has actually a pretty good like little hook here too, because this goes into something that I love, which is, not only do I have the
Yeah.
skill, like, there was this time, and you can use your deep voice, that I slayed these dragons, and I provided value doing XYZ thing by saving myself some quantifiable time, money, and etc. Making sure, right? Because you want to have a story. You want to have a story to tell. And I feel like that's a pretty big deal, right? And you have to be able to explain it in a way that people understand. Like, I love that. So analogies and a story to tell, like, those are two of the recommendations I would make for sure.
Yeah, I do love that that suggestion by Jace. Basically, uh, you need to give it a purpose, right? So it has to have a purpose, basically.
I absolutely make use of my deep voice. So like I'm gonna reveal something to you guys that when I interview in person, I have to sadly share, and this is a thing that I've done several videos on in the community for instructors. There, man, I feel like I'm giving away the secrets now. Guys, I feel a little uncomfortable, but you know what? We're gonna do it. We're gonna be vulnerable for just a moment. So this is where I got wild, right? This is where we get crazy. By being able to do all kinds of like audio effects, a thing that I learned over the years is I figured out, doing a little bit of cognitive research, is that people react to sound and voice and audio first. It is the very first way that we all react to everything. Right? It is the secrets. Um, so this is one of those things where it's not just about character, it's also about being able to develop and or recognize that there are certain things. And I've talked about this at length in our instructor channels. But if I were to pull all of these guys up here and just like, I have gone through and tweaked my sound chain over the years. We call it my signal chain, to be very specific, right? And so I've gone after a specific kind of sound. I'm going to do something right now that is going to sound a little crazy. I'm going to give you what we call the dry audio, meaning the dry sound as opposed to the wet sound that you're getting right now. This is what happens when I turn everything off. So if I turn off all of the equalizer and you just get just everything on, oh man, this is bad. It's like, ugh. So if I turn everything off right now, I will turn that off. I will turn this off. You'll hear like there's no compressor, like you'll just get all the background noise. Oh, there we go. And there's no twin tube to put things through, and I'll turn off this guy, which is the thing that's removing a lot of the background noise, like the fan and the air conditioner and everything. Like now I sound like I'm just a little kid, like calling in from like the other side of a tin can, right? And that's a little wild. There's a reason that when you watch all of those movies that talk about oh, what's her face? Was it who did the Theranos, right? There's a reason that she practiced like that particular gravitas, and it's because people react to it. So I will stop. We'll stop sharing this, and so when I'm in person, I actually like have to practice projecting a certain way, and I also have to like project to speak from the back of my, like for my diaphragm and other things like that, to be able to command a room. And it's been, oh boy, I taught my first in-person class in 2 years post-pandemic, after getting used to being able to hear myself on some really nice audio equipment. But yeah, if we're doing virtual interviews via Zoom, I can just do the thing where I sound like Batman. Right. So that's fun. But actually, Alyssa, I would say that rather than practicing deep voice, the thing that I would say actually is more meaningful for those of you guys who are doing this virtually, is less the deep timbre or the timbre, or like what we might term like your actual tone. What we want to do is remove the room tone. And that's a thing that I didn't realize. Your brain picks it up before you even hear it. So like if you're doing an interview, there's one of the things I heard a lot from journalists and folks that were doing a lot of tech and professional recording, when they had to go into COVID lockdowns, they were suddenly creating like these recording studios where they were in a closet and they would line it with blankets. And it's because you don't want what we call refraction. So the refraction, if you look around my office, my studio here, there's like all of these things to clean up all of the noise. And that is a big deal. If you can't get people to pay attention to you, if they are distracted by the echo or by this tin can or the tinniness of your voice, you have a harder time getting your message across. And so if you can just bypass all of that by removing those distractions, that's a big deal. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
100%. I get a kick out of that when you were saying that. I actually started doing back when, even before ServiceNow for me, so 15 years ago or more, and virtual training was still a new thing, and I had a 1-year-old. I would actually take the teaching in my closet. So there are always all sorts of jokes, as you might imagine, about that. But me hunched
Back in the
over a
cockpit.
laptop,
Yeah. Yeah.
'cause the clothes in the closet were perfect. I've had a few classes that I would teach traveling, and it was the same thing. People are like, "Oh, well, you're traveling. Do you need how much space do you need? I know you do the studio." I'm like, "You have a closet?" Everybody's kind of like, "What?"
Yep.
So sound deadening components are handy, and you can see some sound foam on the back, and I have it on the front as well.
Yeah. I mean,
And those are,
if you
yeah,
switch,
those are
I
not
see
huge
it all over my
fixes.
office too.
Yeah,
The
so there are some things that you
dampening
can
is
do that
definitely
don't
behind.
require huge stuff. Jace comments on that too.
Yeah, it's definitely like the behind you that's the most important, is like making sure that the sound dampening is from behind. So if you've got blankets, if you've got curtains, if you've got anything that will help with that bouncing of the sound to make your room not sound like super big, um, it makes you sound more intimate. It makes you sound like, this is the weird thing about podcasting and vlogging. This is like the people want to
Mhm.
listen to you, right? And I've listened to some amazing content from professors and experts that I love, that I have a real hard time listening to because they sound like they're calling in from the bottom of a well. And it's, you know,
Little things.
little
I
things,
It's
guess
tiny.
I
but it
guess I have
doesn't,
used
and
the
I love that
suggestion
this.
by Jace about the RTX video card. So basically, I'll try to deliver my classes from my gaming PC from now on.
Mm.
So having that RTX video card, Jace, is a great suggestion. I do have it, but for gaming, for other purposes, I'll try to use it to deliver and see the audio difference, basically.
Well, so
So we
this is,
have
oh, sorry, Sean. I was going to
that.
do one more thing on this. I was going
Yeah.
to do like, so y'all, I'm going to be on the road next week, traveling, and I'm going to be taking a mobile setup with me. And this mobile setup is less than $100. And so maybe this is one of those things that maybe people can kind of think about, like in terms of like just a headset and like little tiny things. I'm not going to have my normal gear with me. So I'm not going to have the Neumann. I'm not going to have like the audio amp. I'm not going to have all the signal chain. I'm not going to have all the, like, so we're going to try to do this same gig, and we'll see if I can do it on the road. Um, and in those cases, there are little tiny tweaks that you can do, like that you can do for free. I'm going to be using all the freebie stuff. I'm going to be doing it on my laptop. So this maybe, I don't know, like I didn't mean to make it like about like audio engineering,
High
but
fidelity and audio engineering. That's
right.
okay. I think that's a good thing and good points. But one thing I definitely want to. I feel like my contribution to this is to come back and sum things up whenever I can. But it seems like we have answers from the high end, which include audio cards and mixers and software. At which I tend to throw in there, as someone who's kind of in the middle. Be prepared, and again, to the practice point,
Mhm.
to anticipate a learning curve
Ooh,
and time to practice with. But then the very low and simple end, which is you can equivocate the same things as we're talking about by simply moving your laptop to your closet, or getting places where there are lots of things to baffle and absorb sound. Ben commented on blankets, and several other people did as well. So we have from the I want to tune every little thing in filter, which can be huge, and you can hear the difference in Ben's voice in every production he gives. But then you have middle end, and then you have low end, but they all can accomplish quite a bit. And the biggest thing is even the simplest, which is I have some thick blankets next to me and some sound foam where I'm teaching it out of a closet. All of those things still show that you're paying attention to it, and that makes a difference for the person listening,
it
I think.
does. It does. And I like where we're going with this, because it gets down to practice and intentionality, right? And it's like, I'm going to do a callback all the way to the Brene Brown comment about rumbling and curiosity and feeling confident in your ability to fail, and that sort of like interest, right? Like feeling like you have a safe space to fail, a safe place to practice, a safe way, and a community and people that are going to support you along the way. And when you can admit that you're like really struggling, that you can reach out to people. That is so huge. I would not have gotten anywhere I am now without pinging people that I worked with at PlayStation a bajillion times about like, dude, can you walk me through how this soundboard works?
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Well, and this brings to a good point, which is kind of Bennett had talked to too. We do a second thing, kind of focus more on the teaching, training, facilitating side, called the Catalytic Collaborative Speakeasy. But one of the reasons it's not a stream like this, because it's an opportunity, a practice ground for people who teach in all fields to run things by us and to try in an environment that they can make mistakes at. This is a huge thing for people studying in anything. But the ServiceNow self-paced on demand kind of content is another thing. It's great to have that, but without a cohort to work with. And many of the folks on Next Gen, I love that they work with cohorts, and I think that's
Yep.
huge. So I think that's a great piece. We've got some other questions, it looks like, popping up.
Yeah, and this is great. I'm loving seeing some of the interaction in the chat here, and I'm wondering if I meant wrong banner. If we can help folks, and maybe we just skip to extra credit like at this point because like we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, if we have questions, I'm like, let's grab everything everybody's got.
Questions, comments, all that stuff, but also I want to hear about resources that people are using. I know SN Dev's Slack. And guys, can I for just a moment be like, I wish that I sometimes could just still use Slack. Nobody heard me like on that officially, right? Like I do miss that just every once in a while. But like
Wow.
I still have approval to use SN Devs, and I actually need to get back on that. And for those of you guys who are doing a lot of this work in these cohorts, I think that that's a big resource, right? Like that's a really good. If you haven't already discovered SN Devs Slack, that's a crazy good one.
As is the for folks who are looking to ramp up and want to get deeper into more technical issues, which I think is where SN Devs exists,
Mm-hmm.
and folks who are more towards the gaming area, there's Discord, and there is a Discord channel for ServiceNow developers. I wonder or wish there were an in between cohort or in between resource or channel on Slack or something for people who are maybe not going that deep, but maybe going to administrative or fulfillment layers within ServiceNow. That would be a continual.
Yeah, Reddit is kind of like that. It's in between. You get those simple questions, and basically it's what do I need to do next?
Oh, the
Where do I
Reddit.
start? The basics, basically.
Yeah, and to clarify, I just wanted to call this out. I saw that in the comments. No, I mean I don't have to have approval to be on SN Devs. It's if I want to install it on a work laptop, because like it's owned by a competing platform. We don't always want to give like fork stuff over, and we're always checking licensing. We're using our own platform to check software asset management and the like. So I pay
Yeah.
for my own licensing and all of that stuff, and I actually have both my own Discord and my own Slack servers. So like in order to install it on a local machine, yep, they were totally cool. They're like, yep, cool, you're good. They just don't want to they want to make sure that like ServiceNow is not paying for that.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense. Alyssa had pointed out about being in the next gen cohort, and I cannot say how cool and awesome cohort study is, and
Mhm.
emphasize how important it is to leverage those other people to share information on an ongoing basis, because those people, those folks will be resources to you, hopefully not just into the beginning, but well beyond, and in all phases on the career aspect. So I think that's a good piece.
I like where this discussion has gone this week, honestly.
Yeah.
Folks. Like this
And
has
I'm,
been really fun.
yeah, I can't thank you all enough for being engaged and many of you have thrown questions and comments and feedback in that helps us give us a platform to help answer and direct things out. So Alyssa, and a little earlier we had a few other people commenting in. So please do more of that. That's awesome. That's how we help you.
We do love seeing those questions come in. Comments, questions, voice recordings that you can email to ben.forrest at ServiceNow or sean.mclean at servicenow.com. Those are awesome. We're in the process of like building out an app to take in those voice recordings at some point. But we're actually doing this in the same kind of vein that y'all would be doing it, right? It would be very different. I think Sean, and you probably think this too. Like, I felt like it would be a little bit disingenuous if we just showed up like straight up Julia Child it's like the magic of TV, and then suddenly like
Here's
we
the
have
app.
right, and here's the app, right? Like, and it was just like done, right? And here's this thing, and I feel like part of the process that I wanted to be able to talk about and show, warts and all, is just that sometimes we iterate in small little places. And at this point, like, I am at the very early stages of moving our requirements doc that we talked about last week, which just started with a text file. We didn't even put it into Excel yet. Um, we like our text file, just moving that into like maybe an Excel if we're really fancy. And then moving that into some requirements inside ServiceNow. Maybe we do a virtual task board. I don't know. Maybe nobody knows how to use a virtual task board unless they've gone to Welcome to ServiceNow.
And for people looking for examples of previous iterations of those builds, there are, there's the lady coding happy hour, which I posted in
Oh
the
man,
comments.
so good. I'm
And
gonna go
then
back and find
there's the ServiceNow coding happy hour with Andrew Barnes and Chuck Tomasi that has been going on for years. That have great examples of them kind of hammering those things out on from ground up,
This
which I
is well
think,
trodden territory. Like
yeah,
we are not trailblazers on this. I think we just have a different perspective as we walk this same trail.
yeah, for sure.
So, folks, we've got 18 minutes left on the clock, and I don't know if we want to call it at time, but was there anything that you guys in the room here, profs, was there something in particular that you felt you wanted to call attention to, something that people should be looking at, things that are useful for extra credit this week, things that might help them out?
I am going to grab just a couple thoughts for people who are working those on-demand classes. Partly because, and so that you don't think you're alone in this, I'm going back through some on-demand classes myself. I'm always going into Now Learning to try to take classes that either I haven't taught or that I don't teach regularly or that I taught a long time ago so that I can see the experience that students are going through if I'm teaching live. And one of the ones I'm working on is performance analytics, and it gave me a couple tips that I think are relevant for anyone. So any of the folks who are doing the on-demand courses, what I find is many of those courses use a simulator. And the element to think about with the simulator is that when you get to a step, it asks that you open or wake this simulator first, and you don't get the opportunity to validate the steps until the simulator instance is opened. Now, in taking on-demand labs, what I do is my pattern is I get in the morning before I'm starting any of my work. I go straight to Now Learning. I go to the class that I'm working on every day. I open it up, and I immediately get to the part that starts the simulator, and I click promote, look at those steps, and then I go get my coffee. That's my keep working those. Um, I love Ben's point to do the do the Sims, do the Sims, do the Sims. They're a great way to get hands-on. Jace brings up encourage folks to think about something you don't manage.
That's actually a good point, and
Yeah,
something we talked about a couple weeks ago, which is keep your eyes and ears open, right? when you see something, or like thinking about some of like the folks in your various environments about like what it is that they're doing, um, think about why, right? Like what is it? Like what is it? Like I ask why a lot. I I try not to ignore. I try to ask why instead. So like I like that. I like trying to think, encouraging folks to ask why is on that same kind of note. Yet, made the food rating app, which I also love. I am gonna say on this note, I've had an idea for a long time and haven't done anything about it. And instead of Yelp, I want to make Help, where the people that work at the restaurant get to rate the Yelpers. Um,
That would be so cool.
I think that that would be a lot of fun, and I've thought about it for a lot of years. And so at some point, after clutching all my pearls, won't somebody do something about the children? I think I might, if I have time, make the Help app instead of the
to
Yelp app,
to rate the Yelpers back
right?
for the
Because
non-tippers
yeah,
and then
no, I
cross
started this
post
guy
to
and he
Yelp.
got 0 stars. Yep.
That's a
Um,
Jason,
good
I
idea.
love these points that you're bringing up. This idea and this man, I hope to get a time to just interview Ben on the I built an app to get my kids to do their chores. And Ben,
one of
you
these
started
days.
with that. But anything that looks, as Jay said, like something that you want to track and something that you want to be able, or something that you forget often, that's stuff that you do, two things, a service that you could write down and track, you could build an app for. And I really cannot think of anything that could teach you an understanding of the ServiceNow platform better than that, applying it to something you do every day.
Yeah, like,
ServiceNow started with a burrito ordering app back in the day, in the
well, it
early
didn't start
aughts.
with that, but that was definitely like I think it powered the spaceship is the burrito
Yeah,
app.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't the first, but I mean, to prove that apps could be built, that was one of the early ones thrown out there.
I feel like that instance is still around. Actually, Glenn Pinto brought it to my attention the other day that instance is still around. You can still go find it. People still go look at it. You can go look and examine the original, um,
Nice.
yeah, the whole original workflow, and it's really simple. It was like the proto, and honestly, it just solved a problem. It was like problem meets solution, and it was great. So
Ben, while you're bringing up the Reddit, I want to bring that up as well, because Ermal, you are kind of the Reddit expert in the room, right?
Well, I wouldn't say the expert, but yeah, I'm engaging a lot there. So yeah, Reddit is like we were talking earlier, and you said that we need something in the middle, right, between
Ah,
Slack
perfect.
and another medium. Reddit is kind of like that. You get the basic questions, the simple questions. How do I prepare for the certified system administrator exam, or what do I do next after I pass the exam, or eventually I failed the exam? Why? What did I do wrong? How should I improve? And that's great, because you get the perspective of others who have attended the exam, and there's a lot of engagement there. Everyone has their point of view, and they would give some great ideas on how to prepare for it. For example, I read someone that said that they tried to associate the lectured part with the simulator, with the practice, so they would immediately read and try to reproduce that scenario in the simulator. And there was a follow up to that whole discussion. Everyone would have different ways on trying to prepare and learn for a certain topic, right? Someone would use the simulator immediately in the beginning. Someone would try all the labs by the end, after they went through the content. So there are different approaches to that. Reddit is a great source of information about those strategies, about those learning strategies.
I'm just gonna say, yeah, no, I love that. I love that.
And that's a great resource, because Reddit is not one. It's a shame, because I feel like Reddit's one that may be overlooked, but would be very, very useful. And it's one that I got to start peeking in more.
Yeah, it's fun. It's actually really engaging, and it's always great because you get to hear different perspectives. That's the best thing. So everyone is willing to share their point of view.
Yep.
Nice.
So
But
my
yeah, I can relate to sorry, Ben. Basically, I just wanted to emphasize what Sean said earlier. Try and start the simulator beforehand, because I do that a lot when I'm sleepy. I forget to start it right away. So basically, I'll lose time.
And then you wait, and then you get busy doing something else,
Exactly.
and then by the time you're ready to do it,
Exactly.
yeah.
I was going to say, like, the algorithm really matters. Speaking of, and at some point I would love to do an extra credit, like a deeper dive on the machine learning stuff and some of the funny things that I have done with our
Ooh.
own machine learning.
And
Including,
RPA.
including,
Yeah, RPA would be fun.
so some of the RPA stuff that I've been building, and then also some of the funny machine learning things that I've been doing in terms of like, just like, oh, let me give it a corpus of beer names, fun times. And like Reddit, like Reddit is what you make of it, sort of like any algorithmic thing. So I will say, for those of you guys who maybe use Reddit already and you want to have a fresh start, maybe open ServiceNow Reddit in a incognito browser or on a new account, so that you have a better experience. I would say it's actually a much more positive experience, because I had a very different experience going in with my previous account than from a new user account. I will just say that out there, because like any of the social platforms, it knows a little bit about you if you go in with like your existing accounts. I think that really changes your experience. Also, it's one of the things that I think is really smart about next gen. You guys connecting with each other and posting with each other, and all of the things that you are learning and doing and sharing, that improves your experience, because guess what? LinkedIn is paying attention to you, right? All of these platforms are paying attention to what you're doing and how you're presenting and all of these things. This is what brings your stock is rising number to, right? Like, this is what like brings your presence up, is this sort of stuff. And so like, if my extra credit is maybe, oof, no, we'll save that for another time. That'll be a machine learning episode, to think about some of this stuff. But I would actually say, if you're gonna continue to study, yeah, SN Devs, the Reddit for ServiceNow, and if you've never done Reddit, awesome, welcome. They love you. If you've been doing Reddit for a while and you're like, I'm not quite sure, right? If you haven't curated it, it's like TikTok. I have a burner TikTok account, which is only for cute dogs, and like fun Nerf gun modifications. Like, if I do anything else on it, like, it ruins it. It's like how I feel about Pandora or Spotify. Like, I have to like I have to keep that algorithm in line. If I do anything to jeopardize some of my settings and it thinks for half a second that I'm not paying attention and it tries to slip something into my feed, I'm like, nope, we're not doing it. So like, if I were you guys and you're going to go to Reddit for the first time or any of these other things, maybe just do it on a different account. So I love that.
Or account for an hour or two lost, basically.
But Earl Decay's TikTok and YouTube are totally worth the effort. By the way, on just gonna say, like, I have laughed so hard, and you'll see some of them on my LinkedIn feed. So just gonna say. Ooh.
Oh, there we go.
I like this. Oh yeah. So extra credit, Google that, and then come back with questions. So I want the questions, folks. I definitely want the questions. We need more of the questions. We need a lot more. We've been getting some, and they come in, it's like fits and starts. Sometimes I'll get a bunch. Sometimes I'll get none. But we've only been kind of doing this week-long thing for what, like, this is episode number 6 of the reunion tour. Right?
Yeah, relatively speaking, pretty short window, just a month or so, and kind of tied with this cohort of the on-demand ServiceNow fundamentals and certification exam. So,
Yep.
And that feedback that you give us, Great question. We're looking for the kinds of things. So one of the things we're looking for are the kinds of things that aren't covered or are the gaps that you're finding
Right.
from the resources that you have. So we feel like currently, or the feedback that we've been hearing from students are a lot of I, the course is there for content. I have extra questions that either go deeper or extra questions that maybe aren't practical with deep. It's not. It's either very deep technical. Let me see this code, or more broad. Help me understand the career, the space, the world of work in ServiceNow. And so, any other areas that are specific, that are ideas or questions around those, are areas that we could talk about that maybe the other different resources are not. So, that's what I would say.
Well, that's good. And I see,
John, oh
yeah.
man. Okay. Do us a favor and let us know.
What are you worried about? Like specifically, because I feel like we're trying to, we are here for you. We're trying to do some of that. So if there are things where you're feeling like, and that doesn't translate well to audio, you look at the content, you went through the content, and you're like, I don't know what to make of this right now, or I don't have anything or context to tie this to, like, because we could give you study tips, we can give you like flashcards, we could give you all those things, but I think mostly what we love is where we get context, because that's what you want, right? You want context, we want context, and those questions are amazing. Yeah, and yes. All right, and I'm loving some.
Dashboard latency ideas, diagnostic ideas.
Oh man, I promise you that'll be the, let's do that from the parking lot next week. That'll be on Tuesday. I will give you all of my resources, because I've done several of these for people at various data centers, including some other big ones, where there's like a data center and then they have the welcome, welcome, Professor Falcon. Would you like to play a game? And then there's like the big consoles, and then there's like all of the screens, and they want like a dashboard up on the projector. I will totally help you with that, because I've done it all. I've done all of that. So love it. Love it, love it, love it. Oh, man. I'm going to say this is a whole episode right here.
Yeah.
And I am dealing with several people talking about this right now. And not to be like, oh man, I don't want to be like, oh, and shout out to our expert programs, but the CTA and CMA programs, the Certified Technical Architect and Certified Master Architect, 12-week programs actually give you a lot of this. You know what? I will help us bridge to that, because you got to get to a point where you feel comfortable saying no before you can get into those programs, right? You got to prove that you deserve to be in the room, right? That you can be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. And part of that is saying no. And that is one of the hardest things I've ever had to learn in my life. So I love that. Like, I thank you guys and ladies and babies and gentlemen, like gentlethems. This is awesome. I feel like we've gotten some cool stuff this week. Heck yes, week 6. We did it. And with that, do you guys have any profs? Do you have any closing thoughts?
Final thoughts. Thank you so much for bringing in feedback from the beginning all the way through towards the end. As we're wrapping up, I've put those in the episode notes that we have for next week. I know some people have asked about episode notes. I would tell you they're horribly sloppy. I try to take as much of them as I can, both before and after. We are trying to find a way to bring them out and share them out. So we're working on that piece. But I'm bringing in your questions and bringing those along. Timothy and Jace, when you talked about cheat sheets or docs, there was a question on LinkedIn from Ms. Emily Enfinger. And one of the things that I did was I put an open doc with a super high level JavaScript in there. We'll try to build more and make those available in that way.
Woo! All right. Thanks, John, for that too. And I was going to say, like, cool shout out to SN Guru, Tim and company. I still reference a lot of those in my implementation classes, and some of the books. And I feel like those are some things that are wonderful resources. And thanks for the shout out, John. Appreciate that.
Very cool.
All
Yeah,
right.
I think that's
feel like we
the only
did it.
thing I have.
Yeah, I feel like we did it. Like we did it. It's another week in the can. Thank you guys in chat for hanging out with us for 2 hours, or
Yeah.
however how long you were here, because it was a blast. And as always, make sure please send us your questions, email, text, record a voice message, and attach it to an email because I love those, and I would love to do a supercut this next week of what is ServiceNow. Like that would be rad. If you want to send me those, ben.forrest, 2 R's, at servicenow.com, subject line office hours. I'm hoping to see all of those. And if you have a question, send it to the same place, and or sean.mclean at ServiceNow. We want to like either be able to read them on the show, answer them on the show, play them on the show, because we'd love to hear your voices. Much like my hero, Mr. Kai Risdal, who I have tried very hard to copy a lot of the audio engineering settings. I've gone and had to I've had to do a lot of investigative work to try my hardest to sound like Kai Risdal, whom, if you're hearing this, Mr. Risdal, I love you. I will never be on NPR, but you know what? We can try. So yes, we absolutely definitely need that. We're getting there. We're building the app. We wanted the pain a little bit to kind of push us on some of these things. I didn't want to come with the final Julia Child, like fully baked solution, because that didn't feel real. So I like that we're kind of trying to figure out some of this stuff as we go. You guys are helping us every step of the way. Thank you so much. And man, one more week in the can. Gents, thank you so much for being here. I love it. Thank you so much. Like, this has been fantastic. This has been my favorite week yet. And with that, friends, we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, we should ask Ermal, do you have a link to give us or places you're out on the other place?
Man,
Sorry.
I already pulled the trigger on the thing. I'm gonna have to like reset the. All right, let's try that again. We got
Super
the record.
sorry. Ermal, links to you or your information. You brought that up in LinkedIn. Do you have other ones you want? Reddit, obviously. Check out Ermal on that. Twitter as well. Other places?
I wanted to also mention that we have a ServiceNow now has a new TikTok account, and that might be worth following. There is a lot of great content there,
What?
funny content.
Wait, what? Who has the TikTok account? Who has the who has the
We just started, but yeah, it's not really a lot, but whatever it is there, it's fun to watch. So take a look at that.
Oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm just gonna do all the buttons until somebody gives me TikTok access. Like we're just
Nice.
gonna keep doing like all of the things until somebody gives me access to the TikTok account. Like
I'm going to share the link.
Good find with Jason at an NWE service on LinkedIn.
man,
Very cool.
I learned something myself this week, that I am old and can't be trusted with new technologies because back in the day, it was all just old stuff. And I can't be trusted with TikTok accounts apparently because I'm an old man. I just am not cool enough to have TikTok access, and yet there is a TikTok account. It just happened. All right, sorry. Oh, there we go. All right, thank you so much. Oh man, and we've got some people in the chat. So, like, for those of you guys who were listening earlier and thinking about interviews and trying to deal with all of the incredible, we just need more of you that are talented to step up. So we've got some cool posts here in the comments. Yes. Thank you, Jacob. So, all right, and with that, we know how to find our mall. We now know about the TikTok account. Sean, did you have any final words before I hit the button?
I promise I don't, sir. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. Always.
I love you all. Thank you and have a fantastic night.